and Guidry goes, let's go look at something that took place 40 years ago. Who cares? Okay, that's political.
Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are in the world and or whenever you happen to be watching us. Welcome on behalf of International Broadcast Media, IBM Television. Welcome to The Lawyer's Den. My name is William Tresemont, and I am your host this evening. Now, I'd like to begin certainly first with a program note. We are without one of our cherished colleagues this evening. He is on assignment, as they would say, and that is Fernando Leal, our street fighter from New York. However, I am going to begin with one of my erstwhile friends, and I happen to have something new that I've discovered along the way. And my apologies to our audience, only because I have been giving this young man short shrift. So without further ado, I'd like to first begin by introducing our three-time state chess champion of the state of Florida with the formal title of chess master. Now, he began his academic career having earned his BA and MBA, only later to then attend the Oxford University for Law. Thereafter, he attended international business at Harvard University. Subsequently, he attained his LLM from the University of Denver. He then has gone on to authored over 24 books. He's been a professor for over 38 years at such fine institutions such as Northeastern University. He is a business entrepreneur, having founded 6 startups under his belt, and he also currently is a leader in industry as a CEO of a major company. On behalf of that, I would like to welcome, where in the world is Nick Palavita? Nick Palavita, welcome, my man.
Well, good evening, good morning, good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to the Lawyer's Den.
All right. Nick, how are you?
I am doing great. By the way, when I did go to Oxford, one of my classmates was Terry Bowden. Now, people don't know him, or because they're not as familiar with his dad, who's Bobby Bowden, who was actually the coach at Florida State University. So just a little trivia point. He hung out at the pubs at St. Edmunds in Oxford University. But this we're going to introduce our panel today, and this lady does not hang out at the pubs at St. Edmunds, to my knowledge. But she's from Lithuania, and then she moved to the United States of America, where she received her law degree from the University of Denver School of Law, went on to receive her master's in law from the University of Denver School of Law, and now practices in the great city of Miami. Let's bring in Guidry. Guidry, welcome to the show.
All right.
Yeah, where's your fan club? Where's Stephanie? Where's Dorothy? I don't know. You know, well, I don't know either. But anyway, the thing is we continue on this road to perdition. We actually found this gentleman hanging out in Utah. There was some other person that was hanging out in Utah that made national news, subsequently passed away, but we won't go there. And he actually received his law degree from BYU, Brigham Young University, and his master's in law from George Washington University, and now is an assistant attorney general at the state of Utah for constitutional defense. Let's bring in the very important Jeff Teichert. Jeff, welcome to the show. Yeah. Case that I worked with Jeff on, that, by the way, went to the Supreme Court of the United States. You know, so that was pretty cool. And you find out a lot of cases don't go, 1 out of 1,000, but we got there, baby. Now, this person, I don't think he took a case to the Supreme Court of the United States because he had a different route. Went to the University of Southern California, where somehow he got in, undisclosed. Then went over to the Ohio State University, where he received his law degree, a master's degree at the University of Alabama, and then a master's in law from New York University, teaching law at the Illinois Institute of Technology of Law, and now a professor at Georgia College. Let's bring in our professor, Adam Lamparero. Adam, welcome to the show.
Thank you.
Okay, your fan club, Stephanie. I don't know if she's shown up yet. I'm looking at the boards. Or Dorothy, or whoever else you have on your trip. And of course, the thing is, we have a gentleman who went to Fordham University in New York and also the State University of New York at Buffalo, loves the Buffalo Bills having a good year this year. That is the Honorable William President. Okay. So, Bill,
Yes.
what's on deck for today? What are we going to be discussing?
Well, we are. Well, I'll just begin this way. We're going to be take a bit of a turn today. It's an ongoing question, and it's one that we need to discuss, I think, at about this point in time. Today, we're going to talk. The subject title is Trump, a hero or a horse's derriere, which generally refers to the backside of most mammals around this world. But the question becomes simply this. As we know, he has been banned from various social media platforms. And there's been an ongoing debate as to whether or not he ought to have access to those issues. Now, we've discussed this subject matter in some regard in the past with regard to Section 230 of CDA, the Communications Decency Act. However, the question becomes whether or not Trump should continue to be silenced on these social platforms. In fact, can we indeed silence a political leader? Trump recently stepped back into the foray with a speech in Des Moines, Iowa. So that is the question of the hour. Can we silence the leader from social media? And should we? Should we continue to? Should we allow it? Should we change the law? What do we think about it? Is he a leader? Can we just shut him up? Do we care? And how far can we go? So with that in mind, Nick, who would you like to go to first, since from Harvard, from Oxford, a professor of 38 years. Nick, I mean, seriously, you're like my hidden SME, Nick.
Well, let's go to Guidry and see what her thoughts are on this particular matter about Trump and the media. So I would yield the floor to Guidry, of course.
Okay, Guidry.
Thank you very much for the floor, Nick. I think that it doesn't matter. It's relevant that he is going to be more prominent in the political realm. I think we need to look at his conduct and the specific manipulation of the information and what it caused throughout the years and what the person in his position had done. I don't think that it is smart for us to give him the same tools to manipulate the information and the people in the same way that he did and to cause more damage to that. So I think that he should not be allowed to certain social platforms such as Twitter or Facebook.
Okay, well, first, Guidry, I just want to drill down for a second, and then Adam, I'm coming to you. So, Adam, get ready to tee off. Guidry, does it matter that the social platforms are controlled by the government, or that, in fact, that they're private sector owned? Does that matter to you or no?
Absolutely, absolutely, it matters, and we have to look at the Section 230. Constitution, First Amendment, that really regulates the conduct of the government. When it comes to private companies, private companies also have duties and obligations to their audience and to their shareholders. Trump, as a more prominent politician, and even now we can see he has access to a lot of media. He's constantly on TV. There are different options for him. So there's not just only Twitter or Facebook or Instagram, and actions have consequences. Private companies can regulate their platforms, and Trump does not deserve, rightfully so, to be allowed.
Okay, Guidry, thank you so much. Adam, please, and then Beth, I'm coming to you. Adam, right? I think we set you right up for everything. So, Adam, please. If I may, does it matter to you whether or not the companies are governmental owned versus privately owned? If you could, your thoughts.
Yes, it does. If a company is privately owned, it's not subject to the Constitution or the First Amendment, therefore can do what it wants. But Facebook and Twitter are no longer privately owned. The White House is working directly with Facebook and Twitter to censor what they believe are misinformation. And that turns in social media into a government entity that therefore qualifies as a state action doctrine. In other words, when the government works with a private corporation to censor information it doesn't like in violation of the First Amendment, the private corporation should be held to the standards of the First Amendment. Now, it's no surprise to me, Bill, of course, that Guidry would favor censorship for people that Guidry doesn't like. That's not surprising at all. It's no surprise that Guidry doesn't come down on the side of liberty, which doesn't like the people who she's dealing with. But to be honest with you, I believe in a democracy, and I believe in the diverse exchange of all ideas. And I wish Guidry would adopt that position. I'm shocked that she doesn't.
Okay, Adam, I just have one follow-up question because this distinction between government-owned versus private-owned is really important because my understanding is that the law says that, listen, as Deidre pointed out, the law as it currently stands, if it's the government, then the First Amendment attaches because it's government action. But because we're in the private sector, normally First Amendment doesn't attach because it's a private business. But you're making the argument that there's an exception in Supreme Court rulings that when a private company is so pervasive, such that it's a company town, that we can essentially impugn to that private company that they are in fact the equal of the government for that jurisdiction, therefore the First Amendment applies. Do I have that argument correct?
You're correct, Bill. When the government tries to use a private company to do that which they could never do under the First Amendment, the private company becomes a state actor. And that's what's happening here, because if you look at Jen Psaki, in numerous press conferences, she said the Biden administration is working with Facebook to censor what they call disinformation.
Okay, no, that's an argument. I just wanted to get, the structure of your argument down first. Now, Jeff, you're up, please. Jeff, can I see your smiley face? And then Nick, I'm coming to you. And we're going to bring everybody up. So, Jeff, first I need your earphones. But let me just set this up for you, Jeff. We have the two sides right now. We have Deidre on the one hand as she examines it. And now you have Jeff on the other side examining the subject. But Jeff's making an interesting argument. He's making the argument under the Supreme Court doctrine of a company town, which impugns First Amendment obligations to private companies. What do you think about that, Jeff? And actually, could you explain that? Because you are our SME on the Constitution. Jeff?
Well, a couple of things. First of all, I agree with the point that's been made throughout this program that if it is a private company, the First Amendment does not apply to it. The First Amendment requires state action. So, in other words, if I own a company and I hire some people to work for me and I ask them to sign a trade secret agreement, a non-disclosure agreement, there is nothing wrong with doing that because it's a private company. I'm not using the force of government to impose that on someone. Now, in this situation, I think it's complicated because it impugns our First Amendment values significantly, even though you may or may not have state action. I hadn't considered what Adam said, that the government is working with Facebook to censor opinion. If that is true, then I think the First Amendment would apply. But beyond that, Justice Louis Brandeis said, if there be time to expose through discussion the falsehoods and fallacies to avert the evil by the processes of education, the remedy to be applied is more speech, not enforced silence. So I think that's the undergirding value, that we put up with a lot of offensive speech because we don't want to impinge on freedom, and we're okay to have some bad speech out there, some incorrect speech out there in the interest of protecting the marketplace of ideas. So bottom line, I would apply 230 to say, look, companies, Facebook, Twitter, whoever, it's fine if you want to censor someone from your platform, but by doing that, you have become a publisher and you're no longer protected by government immunity for the results of what people may say on your platform.
Okay, I'm going to come back to that, but I just want to drill down just with a follow-up question, Jeff, if I may, and that is this, is that my understanding of the Supreme Court doctrine is essentially that if a private company is so pervasive and controlling that essentially they are in charge of all the information, say, for example, because this was the actual case, that it was a company town run by a private corporation, that therefore that corporation was held to essentially be the government, and therefore First Amendment values and the law attached to them. Now, what I understand our colleague Adam to be asserting is that, in fact, the U.S. government is acting in concert, which is a little bit different than the Supreme Court doctrine. It's more of a new argument, that if they're acting in concert with one another. So that's a novel argument. But I hear you saying that 230 actually fundamentally should be reformed in terms of what we're saying about the private companies to begin with. Am I correct with that?
Yes, I would I would use 230 to prevent government immunity from attaching to a company that explicitly makes efforts to censor content on the platform.
Okay.
Because the reason why NBC and Fox News and whoever else doesn't get immunity is because they are controlling their programming and they're responsible for it. The same is not necessarily true of Facebook, but to the extent that they're trying to do that, I think they should lose their immunity.
Okay, Nick, can we get everybody on board? Because, Nick, I'm coming to you because you, my friend, have held all of these hats, okay? So here we have all of the arguments. We've heard Adam, and we've heard Jeff. Now, Nick, you as a publisher, you as a media mogul and a beneficiary under Section 230.
Yes, Counsel.
All right.
I've actually read the complaint. I don't know if you saw that. It was actually in July of this year. And the complaint was obviously Donald Trump versus Facebook. It was filed by a gentleman by the name of Matthew Bolden in the Federal Southern District of Miami, Florida. So it's actually in the Southern District of Florida. And the complaint has, as you know, all these allegations that actually the panel has brought up, not as well defined as what Adam is trying to intertwine or Jeff in terms of state action, which I think is extremely important. One of the also important things is this: will this complaint file basically survive a 12B6 motion, a failure to state a claim with one relief can be granted? In other words, I see it to be a very weak complaint. The attorney that filed the complaint actually did go to Duke University and then went to Wake Forest University to law school. And then he works at a small firm in Miami, Florida. And basically had all the eardrops of Trump, a lot of rambling. But if you want to know, is there a consistent argument that a judge could hold their hand on without a summary judgment? I think they're in for a big fight. Because the real problem is you're talking about private corporations.
Nick, Nick, hang on, because you're not off the hot seat yet. I really want to drill down on this one, Nick, and that is essentially this. Look, we've heard your argument, and apparently up to now the courts agree that Trump's litigation might be specious, and it's on shaky ground, if any ground whatsoever. But I guess the question now is the argument that either Adam is making and or that Jeff's making. Adam's making the argument that essentially if we find that the current administration or any governmental agency is working in cahoots with these private actors, then they should be held liable under the terms of the First Amendment, and Trump and or anybody else who's should be allowed free and open access to everybody's platform. That's one. Two, on the other hand, we have the argument from Pedri, which says, hey, listen, there's the government action, then there's private action, and if it's private action, tough luck. Now, Nick, which way do you come down? I mean, first, do you think the government took cahoots in censoring Trump? Second, do you think even if the government is in cahoots, that private companies have an obligation to air Trump and or any other speech that they might not like, Nick?
Okay, have you heard of this word, Bill? Summary judgment for the defendant? I mean, the thing is...
No, Nick, let me answer
this could be a real tough battle.
No, hang on, Nick.
I don't think they motioned for a jury trial. I don't think a jury's going to see the light of day on this one. I think it's dead on arrival. The only question is, the only thing I didn't do, I read the complaint to see whether this has already been dismissed or not, because Trump throws a lot of stuff out there that doesn't survive a summary judgment, and this might be one of them. So who knows?
Okay, well, I'm going to try it this way. I'm going around the horn. Adam, I'm coming back to you, and then I'm coming to you, Jeff, and then I'm coming to you, Guidry. So I'm going to go Adam, Jeff, Guidry. You guys get ready. But Nick, first I want to answer your question, and I want to be quite clear. As the only non-LLM on this panel, words like summary judgment are way above my my educational degree. But that's just
It's true. That's true, Bill. But let's put it this way for the audience: you don't get a trial. It's over because your complaint is so bloody stupid. No judge could want to listen to it. So they grant a summary judgment and out the door you go. 12B6 motion, failure to state a claim which relief can be granted. Oh, I'm going to sue Trump because he lives in Palm Beach and his breath takes me away. That's something that which relief can't be granted because it's so bloody stupid that no judge is going to listen to it. That's what he's facing.
Okay, now Adam, I'm coming to you, and I have a bit of a twist for you, Adam, and that is this, because and I want to revisit your previous position, but I want to give you another example to see if your position remains true intellectually, and that is, listen, on September 11th, back in 1941, believe it or not, we did in fact have an America First political party in Des Moines, Iowa. Not unlike this recently when Trump held a rally in Des Moines, Iowa. There was a gentleman there who spoke on behalf of the America First political party. The year, again, was 1941. The speaker was Charles Lindbergh. In that speech, he was advocating America First isolationism, and he attacked Hollywood. He attacked Jews as running Hollywood. He attacked essentially what we now would call the left. And people in his comrades in the America First party back in 1941 distanced themselves from him and essentially blackballed him from any future speaking engagements. Now, at the time, there was no internet, but the newspapers didn't put Charles Lindbergh front and center anymore. They didn't cover him. The radio wouldn't let him speak. So I guess my question is, Adam, was that okay when they did it to Charles Lindbergh back in 1941? And if it was okay then why shouldn't it be okay now in the year 2021 with Donald Trump? Adam, here.
Wonder how that happened.
Can you not hear me?
No,
We can hear you. You're good.
Nick was messing with you.
I was messing with
Thank you for deciding not to censor me. So I'll answer that question. For the audience, a private company is not subject to the First Amendment. Only public companies or government entities are subject to the First Amendment. But when the government uses a private company to further its agenda, which is what the Biden administration is doing with Facebook, for example, then they become a government entity and thereby are subject to the First Amendment. So your distinction is different. But what I would like to say is that what's underlying this whole discussion is a true dislike and hatred for Donald Trump. And before I end, I just want to point out the list of things that Donald Trump did as president. 7 million new jobs, an employment rate of 3.5%, middle-class income that rose on average $6,000 a year, jobless claims at a 60-year low, African Americans and Hispanics, lowest unemployment rate on record. Shall I go down the line? Double the child tax credit for individuals, secured the border and secured deregulation to allow our corporations and our economy to prosper. Now, let's look at what Biden's doing. Well, I shouldn't have to say it. It should be obvious. Case closed.
Add a bit of a twist from Adam. Adam's essentially making the argument. Today's topic is Trump, hero or horse's derriere, the silence of a leader. Now, we just heard from Adam saying that, citing why Trump should be considered a hero. Now, is Trump a hero, or is he a horse's derriere? Oh, Nick is coming in with a red flag and challenge. That is
the thing is, you can't let Adam get away with these political statements.
well, Adam, you can't. Nick is up.
Silence, young man. Silence. You can't get away with these political statements. In other words, the thing is, we're looking at a legal action.
You sound like Idris. You want to censor people you don't like.
Yeah, right, that's true. Okay, but the thing is, we're looking at a legal action, and he's giving us a political statement. By the way, also, we're looking at the four corners of the complaint. I think your complaint is actually better than the one Matthew Baldwin put in. He needs your help because he didn't put in the argument that you're putting in, that Facebook is a state actor. That's so important, and he didn't put it in. So if you don't put those arguments in, and I'm a judge listening to it, I'm just going to dismiss it. I'm going to say, you didn't file a complaint which relief can be granted. Go look at his 50-page complaint. It rambles on just like
me and ask me to represent them. No one.
Well, you need to get involved in this stuff, But the thing is, he rambles on just like Trump. It's almost inconceivable. The only way, Adam, that thing will survive a summary judgment is he's got to do exactly what you told him to do. But I don't think he listens to lawyers now.
Okay,
and that is to bring in the argument that the government is basically de facto influencing Facebook to do their bidding. Without that, this case.
Thank you, Nick. I agree with you.
Gentlemen, we've got to go to Jeff, and I've got to get to Gabby before I lose their interest. Now, Jeff, you've heard the arguments. Jeff, what are you thinking? Is Trump a hero? Horses ass? Did they plead their case wrong? I mean, what are we doing here, Jeff? Because go ahead, Jeff, please.
Well, I think Trump is a hero for the reasons Adam said. I think he's a horse's ass because he doesn't have a really presidential temperament, and he caused a lot of trouble with the way he used Twitter and other things during his presidency. So I think it's a mixed bag with Trump. I think it always has been and probably always will be. Now, but would I censor him? No, I wouldn't censor Trump. I wouldn't censor David Duke. I wouldn't censor Al Sharpton. I wouldn't censor anybody I don't agree with. I would censor. I would only censor if there was a clear and present danger to public safety. Now, in the case we're talking about, the argument that Adam makes, I think, is an interesting one. As Nick says, that's probably going to be reserved for another day, because if they didn't raise the argument in their pleadings, they aren't likely to be able to raise it later in the litigation.
Right.
And so that's that horse may have run already. One final thing on that. There was a thing back in the time of President John Adams called the Alien and Sedition Acts.
Yep, absolutely. Go right ahead.
Made it a crime to, quote, write, print, utter, or publish any false, scandalous, and malicious writing or writings that would have the effect of bringing officers, quote, into contempt or disrepute in the opinion of the good people of the United States. Now, James Madison, the author of the First Amendment, roundly condemned the Alien and Sedition Act, and he said, quote, the people, not the government, possess absolute sovereignty, and further on said that he would rather leave a few noxious branches on the tree than to cut away the proper fruits. So he is erring on the side of more speech, not less. And I have to agree. I think if we've got somebody who's making false claims, the answer to that is use whatever bully pulpit you've got and stand up and say, no, that isn't true. This is what's true.
Okay. No, thank you. Now, I didn't mean to cut you off, but Deidre, I really want to get to you because now I want to kind of tease your position out now that you've heard our colleagues. And that is this. First, they say, well, Adam says you can't do it and you can't censor for a variety of reasons. Now, whether his arguments are valid or not valid, I want to ask you this question. If, in fact, you say that private companies can censor, isn't that really a slippery slope? Because then can't the reverse also be true, that other companies can censor those ideas that they don't like, maybe liberal ideas? And aren't we, don't we just end up canceling everybody else out?
Well, I do see the problem with social media platforms. The big and probably primary problem with that is that we have 2-3 main social platforms that manipulate, they really control the United States and all the communication. In fact, those 3 platforms such as Twitter, Facebook, and YouTube are the primary news sources for a lot of people in the United States and in the world. The problem here that I see with Trump and him and the private companies not being able to control him or kind of exclude him from their business model is that certain people in certain positions create clear and obvious present danger to the society by the manipulation of the information. And I don't know what kind of other example we need to see if we don't need to look in January 6th insurrection. 6 people died. We had a horrible, unprecedented event in 21st century. And you know what? In part of it, it doesn't matter. We can talk left and right, green and red, but we know that Trump's dialogue and the orchestration of the events had to play a role in it. We know also that Trump, since then, didn't make any changes in his communication. He is dividing our country, I apologize, and it has not been divided as this in the history and recent history, and it creates clear and present danger. And I do think that there is a problem with social platforms and it needs to be resolved. But Adam is talking about apples, I'm talking about oranges. Social platforms have a big monopoly in our
And you're not being
our
logical.
society. We need to moderate their authority and power. Yet, if we're going to say that government, because government has certain involvement in such a big social platforms, then government is really agent, and this social platform in its all 100% should be attributed to the government, then the water will become incredibly muddy. And I think it will affect tremendously the freedom of the speech and freedom of expression and doing business. So I really think that that's where is the slippery slope, and we cannot just like put this label and go with it. I think we really have to dissect it.
Okay, Nick threw his second challenge. Nick, you have the floor. No, Nick, please.
Guidry is back to making political statements. In other words, she's just like Adam, except sits on the other side. The political statement, oh yeah, he's in charge of making sure all the riots took place in January 6th. We already went over this at Lawyers Dead. For those, he didn't. He did just the opposite. The real problem is the media, and I'm talking about mainstream media, was not reporting it accurately. Then the next thing she does is she crucifies social media. Social media is the only thing that actually can offset major media in the world, literally. So what do you want? One controlled media like you had in the Soviet Union? Everybody looks at TOSS. We're going to look at, one media. See, having multiple outlets actually does make a difference in getting the truth to individuals. And suppressing him is not the answer. But do they have the right to cut him off? Absolutely, because they're private corporations.
No, Nick, let me just
tell them to go to Parler.
No, hang on.
I'm throwing the red flag with my red
You
flag.
better get your red flag if you want to throw your red flag.
I just want to say statements like really quickly. Trump having access or having such a big following in the United States by itself, by his Twitter's, his statements during the insurrection or during the event, maybe not that intentionally, was directly creating danger to the society. And I think that should be sufficient for those private companies, as they are right now, Facebook, Twitter, YouTube, to be able to decide, hey, we don't want someone with such a big authority and such a big capability to really create such a tragedy that it happened in the United States recently, to be able to manipulate our social network that Nick mentioned is so diverse and really can give something benefit and new information to the society.
Okay, Gabe, you got it. Adam, I'm coming to you. Well, Jeff, I'm coming to you after Adam. Now, Adam, I want to ask this, a bit of a twist. So you can certainly respond to our colleagues that have advanced their schools of thought, but I want to ask you this question. You've tied this specifically to Trump as the personality. What if I take out Trump and I insert, say, somebody else? Joe Schmo from Main Street. Now, would you feel the same in your arguments if I took out the cult personality of Trump and stuck in Joe Sixpack, say, from I think it was the, which campaign was it with Obama and Romney? And we had McCain and Obama, Joe Sixpack. If it was Joe Sixpack, would you feel as passionate about it if he was in place of Trump? Adam, unmute please first.
Yes, absolutely, because every person should be allowed to share their views. And we benefit from when we have diversity, a diversity of perspectives and ideologies. That's what informs citizenry, and that's what makes democracy work.
Okay.
I got cut off for the third time.
I had a quick question, Adam. I know. Go ahead, smirk all you want, but my question is really going to help you, and that is this: when you advocate diversity and you say that there ought to be more diversity, then doesn't that really mean that you, unlike Jeff, don't believe that Section 230 should be reformed because 230 provides a platform for a multitude of voices that we've never heard from before, as Nick and Guidry argue for? So if you're for diversity, then you don't want 230 reform.
It means that when white people were lynching black people in the South, we needed the black voices of Martin Luther King to bring equality and justice to this country. The people who are marginalized and discriminated against and hated should be the ones who are respected. Guidry wants to censor all of them, and Facebook is working with the government to censor people that they don't agree with. Guidry doesn't believe in the First Amendment. She believes in only allowing speech that she likes. And guess what? If you had that society, black people would still be in segregated schools. They would still be getting lynched. Do you understand that? The First Amendment is designed to help people have a voice who are marginalized and discriminated against, and that's the whole point. Guidry doesn't favor that, and Guidry's wrong.
Okay, Jeff and Guidry, I'm coming back around. And Nick, I know you're out there somewhere. Don't think I don't have my third eye.
I can only handle so much from Adam. Everybody has the right to speak, but we'll get to that later on.
Okay, I'm coming to you after I come to Jeff.
You speak.
Yeah, but the thing is, you don't
Why
have
are you
the right
any
to
different
speak
than anybody
everywhere.
else? You're all equal.
Yeah. Right, but the thing is, I can barge into your classroom and say, look, I have my right to speak, so I'm gonna speak in front of Georgia College. No, I can't do that. Okay, come on. Corporations have rights too. And so the thing is,
The
if
government is
corporation owns
influencing
the
them
house,
and using them to do their dirty work.
I'm sure Georgia College would escort my little butt right on out of there, just like Facebook escorted his butt off of Facebook.
No, gentlemen, I understand. Nick, you've made your point, and Adam has made his argument about collusion. Now, Jeff, Adam is saying that essentially, if you reform Section 230, black people will never be free again. Jeff, is that is that an argument that we can even take seriously, Jeff? I mean,
I don't.
Will be slaves. I mean, we didn't have 230 then, and I mean, I'm kind of confused, Jeff.
To me, 230 needs to be applied in such a way as to encourage the networks, the social networks, to allow as many voices as possible. And the distinction is really very simple. Are you a publisher? If you're Fox News, if you're CNN, I might not agree with the way you're covering a particular story or the opinion you express on an opinion show, but I will defend your right to do it. And the problem with Guidry's position is when you get into trying to say you don't get to spread lies and you decide what a lie is and what a truth is, who's the Ministry of Truth that determines that? A lot of people say, oh, Donald Trump's out there lying. Well, a lot of media lied about Trump's involvement in the January 6th insurrection. And you would think from the way a lot of them covered it that Trump planned the whole thing, told people to go down there and burn the place down and so forth. Well, should we censor them from trying to make that connection, even though it's a lie? Well, no, because oftentimes a lie is in the eye of the beholder. That's what they did in the Soviet Union. They determined that anything that didn't follow the party line was a lie. And the antidote for lying is more speech.
Okay, no, fantastic. Now, Nick, I'm coming to you because Nick, no, Nick, you're out of challenges. You already used those are the rules. But I'm coming to you anyway. And
Thank you.
Because DJ, I want you to pay real close attention to Nick's answer on this one. Now,
Okay, I just want to. I would like to breathe a little reality.
No, Nick. My question first. First. I mean, this is the only privilege I have is hope. Now, everybody's attacking the private platforms, Twitter, Facebook, and everything else. But you, as an entrepreneur and head of international broadcast media, you have your own platform and you have a number of producers and publishers. I guess my question for you stems from you in that role, and that is this. Some months ago, when Trump was banned, he went out and started his own social media platform. But lo and behold, it did not take off. And lo and behold, he did not attract a whole bunch of viewers, which is why he's trying to argue and suing to get back onto Twitter and Facebook. Now, it seems to me he had the same opportunity as you did, and you went out and you built a successful platform. So why is it that we ought to reward, under the arguments that Adam's advancing, why should we reward Trump for being a failure by giving him space on your social platform when you were a success? Is that fair to you, Nick?
Okay, first of all, I need to breathe a little reality into Adam and Jeff on what's going on out there. The IBM TV network was taken down by YouTube for a week. We just came back up last Wednesday. Why? We discussed COVID-19, and somebody on our panel, I don't know which show it was, said something in favor of not being vaccinated. Seriously. With that, YouTube, who's owned by Google, shut us down for a week. Okay, here's the reality, Mr. Constitutional Attorneys. They can do it. And here's our recourse, zero. I mean, we have no recourse. Now, we don't distribute directly through our own OTT, which I have our OTT guy saying, hey, you have your OTT. Not that easy. We redistribute. through LinkedIn, Facebook, YouTube, and Twitch predominantly. So the thing is, all the shows you're seeing now go to potentially 974,000 Facebook people on Facebook groups, or it goes to YouTube, and YouTube is like a death knell, but we're still doing pretty good there. So it's redistributed through Facebook. If Facebook or YouTube decide we don't like what you're saying, they shut us down. And there's nothing we can do except sit there and go, oops, I guess we can't talk about COVID. We can't talk about COVID-19.
I got it, Nick. Jeff, you're in. Jeff, you're up.
All right. So I don't disagree with what Nick is saying. However, I also believe that if they're going to come in and shut down the Lawyer's Den on YouTube, then because they disagree with it, they must agree with everything left, right? And so that means if somebody is planning an Antifa rally and they advertise it on YouTube, if someone is writing or saying things that encourage people to burn cities, then they must agree with that, because they are censoring the stuff that they don't agree with. And so all I've got to say is under 230, they shouldn't receive any immunity, because they are controlling the content.
Okay, that was an excellent flag. Guidry, you're up in center. Please move to the center stage. Guidry, you ready for the big lights? Jeff just made an excellent argument. And, you know it and I know it. Listen, if I have the right, and I in fact do exercise the right to censor, that must mean by implication that I approve of everything else I let through, including Antifa argument. I mean, that would be true. So that if we censor, if they are allowed to censor Trump and anybody else that comes along and spouts off views that they may disagree with, that means by definition, they agree with and approve of everything else on their platform. Guidry, what do you have to say about that?
I think that it's completely irrational to put this definition. Yes, on the paper it sounds great, but with the context, with the intensity and the amount of the content that daily, every minute is posted on those platforms, it is impossible to come to this assumption. It just doesn't make any sense. I think that we understand that social media platforms are out of control, and they do enjoy the lack or even absence of liability in certain extents. I am very, very, very against censorship. Coming from the post-Soviet Union country, Lithuania, I do still remember the feeling. I still smell that notion of censorship, and it lingers. But my argument is, I was talking, deciding in the context of Trump or certain individuals that have possibility with evidence, with the conduct in the past, to continue divide our country, that could cause damage to the country. That's where my point is. When it comes to Nick's point, when it comes to what YouTube did, I find it absolutely horrible. I do not agree with it. I think that we need to talk about it. We need to hear all of the opinions, and we do. Unfortunately, right now, this everything that comes to our attention is too immense to really try to box it and categorize in a correct way, and we left with so much unprecedented amount of information that it really makes it difficult for us to decide what to do. And those platforms by themselves right now, I will agree with Jeff, they are becoming publishers, because they do pick and select, and sometimes it could be completely unjustified methods, but that's the nature of the beast. Still, I'm not changing my mind in regards to Trump and their authority as a private operators, as they are right now, to be able to dismiss certain consumers.
Okay, Adam, I'm coming to you, so check your mic, because apparently somebody's upset out there. They think that we're muzzling you, and I'm not in any way, shape, or form, because I dig you, Adam. But I want to kind of focus in on this. Guidry makes a point. I want to acknowledge that he made an excellent point, that there really is, across all these platforms, a tidal wave of information that really sometimes makes it overwhelming for an individual to kind of sift out the truth and not truth. So that's an excellent point, Guidry. But Adam, more importantly for you, I want to pick up on a point that Guidry raised, and that is coming from the backdrop of a former totalitarian society. She talked about the stench. And I'm going to call it the stench of stagnation of the free marketplace of ideas. And it seems to me that any attempts to stop what private companies are doing in any way, shape, or form, in fact, attempts to place governmental control over private speech. And that leads invariably to the stench of stagnation of the free marketplace of ideas, Adam. So, I mean, how does that work? On the one hand, you don't want them censoring Trump. And then on the other hand, you do want to punish them and make the government responsible. Adam, how does that work? How do we get more speech, as Jeff would want, and yet still keep everything that you would want?
By recognizing that the government is using social media to do what it cannot do under the First Amendment. I'm not talking about regulating private corporations. I'm saying when the government uses social media to discriminate on the basis of content that it doesn't like, then we are not in a democracy anymore. Isn't it funny how Deidre spoke so passionately about how we should censor Trump? But when it came to Nick, Deidre said, "Oh, that's so horrible." That's the point I'm trying to make. She would censor based on who she likes and who she doesn't.
I know.
That's what the First Amendment exactly prohibits.
No,
You can cut me off, but you know what? Imagine if Facebook censored Martin Luther King.
I know. No, hang on, Adam. Adam, you cannot be allowed to get away with just these throwaway arguments. One.
I know, I'm such a terrible person.
No, because we are specifically talking about what private companies can and cannot do. And right now, I'm just going to ask you point blank. The law allows private companies to do exactly what Deidre's talking about. That is, Facebook and Twitter, as a private company, can decide who's on their platform. Yes or no?
Yes, Bill, but you're missing the distinction. The distinction is private companies are not private anymore because the government is using them.
I know. No, hang on, Adam. But that's your argument, and that's an argument that's not yet.
Well, Jen Psaki admitted it.
I know.
But
No, but Adam, that's an argument that needs to be made in court and proven. Because right now it's just an argument. Right now, isn't that correct? It's just an argument. It's never been proven in court. Right, Adam?
No, it's a fact.
Okay, fine, Adam. It's a fact. Nevertheless, okay, Deidre, chalk one up for you. Now, Jeff, I want to come back to you. And Nick, somewhere out there, I'm coming to you after Jeff. Now,
I'm listening.
Always the eye in the sky like Big Brother, Nick, making sure that we are on point. Jeff, I know that you believe in more speech rather than less. I know that you believe in more democracy rather than less. How do we figure it out? I mean, if for the foreseeable future, we don't see 230 being reformed, at least before the next election. We also know that there's going to be a complete proliferation of private actors, citizens, whether or not it's Trump or others, on this platform of private publication. So where do we draw the line, Jeff? Because it seems to me this is possibly overwhelming for the average citizen. But at the same time, don't they have a right to speak? They have a right to free associate with their friends, put on what they want. Jeff, what would you do?
Well, first of all, like I said on Section 230, I would simply say if you're going to censor content other than for obscenity or something like that, if you're going to censor content, then you're a publisher and you're responsible for the content that you don't censor. And if they're not going to abide by that, if they're going to censor for political viewpoint, then they're a publisher and they shouldn't receive immunity for being an online platform. And that's where I would draw the distinction on that. I know you know that I believe in more speech, not less, and so forth. But also, I think, like you said, Adam's argument, we've got to prove how deep that government involvement goes. But if the government is in some way strong-arming or cooperating with a private entity to censor undesirable viewpoints, then I think that has become a government actor and would need to abide by the First Amendment. I'm not convinced we're there yet, but I'm willing to look at it.
Okay, now, Nick, please reveal yourself, oh great wise one from the Wizard of Oz. Young man, here is my question. We happen to have a question from the audience from Elijah. He had actually made 2 points, and I want to ask you this. His initial question, as I recall it, and I'm paraphrasing here, his question, and I think what he was driving at was, can the government force citizens to purchase goods and services. That is, can anybody occupying the government come in and tell me I've got to buy this and I got to buy that? Now, the issue there simply is this. I guess the import of that question is this: is that by the same token, can the government force a private company such as Facebook or Twitter to carry speech that they do not like and force it upon me as a consumer?
No.
Okay. Now,
No, I mean, it's real simple. It's a private company. And let's say the private company doesn't want to hear from Martin Luther King. They can go, click, you're off. We didn't mess his freedom of speech. He can go down the hall and scream all he wants to. He can go down to Washington, D.C. and scream all he wants to. We're talking about a private company. If the private company doesn't want to listen to you, click, you're off. And we've already experienced it many times here on IBM TV. Many times. They don't like what we say, they turn us off.
I know, Nick, I have a follow-up for you just on that point, because now that we have Martin Luther King invoked, isn't it in fact true that the argument that Adam is making tonight, that is to say, that there was collusion and undue influence, direct action by the American government, if it's true with Facebook and Twitter, then that would somehow be violative. But in fact, with Martin Luther King, wasn't that indeed the case with the FBI, COINTELPRO, as well as various other government agencies taking direct action to silence Martin Luther King and put pressure on private corporations at that time? Isn't that true, Nick?
I don't know, but I don't recall the free speech lawsuit that Martin Luther King filed against the FBI. If you can bring that forward to me, Counselor, I'd like to see it. And I understand Adam's argument. In other words, the government is colluding with Facebook. But you better bring some heavy evidence, or, which will be the question here that the panel is going to ask, is this case going to survive a summary judgment? In other words, you're not going to, or a motion to dismiss. You don't have a case. You're just blabbing to the court. You don't like the fact you got censored, but you better bring that government evidence in. If you don't have it, goodbye.
Okay, well, actually, Nick, on that point, Adam, and I'm going to come to you quickly, and Gigi, I'm right after Adam. But Nick, in fact, the case was brought, and it was under the lawsuit that proved the existence of a program called COINTELPRO that was run by the FBI that actually proved government action throughout the 60s. COINTELPRO for you. Now, Adam, it seems to me any lawsuit that your colleagues in your school of thought might want to bring, they might want to look up that same thing, COINTELPRO, and then they'll see the blueprint for government action in terms of proving your case. Now, that having been said, Adam, look, if you force Facebook and Twitter under this notion that Facebook and Twitter now have reached the level of a company town, that doctrine for the Supreme Court, can't I force Trump's media organization to carry me when I want to talk about, say, black reparations on their platform?
No. And
so they shouldn't be able to let me, but you want to be able to force them to carry Trump.
Yes, and I'll tell you why. Because the government is working with Facebook and colluding with Facebook to suppress views that they don't like. Jen Psaki said it, the Biden administration administered. That's the difference. I believe in more speech, diverse speech, and particularly speech by marginalized groups that have no voice. And
Okay.
this government is doing the opposite.
Deidre, I come to you only because now I can actually say the following. I am pleased to deliver to you Adam's own words that I am not allowed on Trump's platform, but Trump should be allowed on everybody else's platform. But for that, he's not a hypocrite. So I really don't see the difference between his position and your position. So, Gigi, do you have any thoughts on who can be allowed and who's
The government's not working with Trump.
Okay, Gigi, who should be allowed and who's sandbagged?
Yeah, well, I just must say I cannot get enough of Adam being a politician. You're really playing that role well, especially with the last statements, not only with the finger. Well, I do think that it makes sense. I really do think that when we get to this censorship role and then combining platforms, social media platforms with government, and then saying, okay, this is not governmental enough and this is not private enough, and therefore those roles could be changed or completely ameliorated one from another. I think that we start losing the main point here that we want to talk about. And the issue is not being resolved by really just throwing the ball from one corner to another. What Adam is saying is just changing the hats, in my opinion. I think that we really need to understand and probably define within the society of what role those social platforms take in our world, in the fabric of our lives, and whether those, as Adam says, are the governmental institutions or not. I would see a problem with that, because really we would be stepping away from the freedom of expression and freedom of create business, really, and having your own institutions.
Okay. No, excellent. Lady in red. Jeff, we're getting to that hour. So the lightning round concluding, just because remember we have the vote, and then I have to turn it over to Nick. And Nick's a windbag whenever he lands his plane. So Jeff, you're up, please.
Well, not to raise a whole new issue at the very end, but if you followed the thing with the Facebook whistleblower recently, she's come out and exposed all of this stuff about how the Facebook algorithm is detrimental to the public interest because it allows the most divisive speech to come to the top of their of your news feed. Well, I think this illustrates one of the major difficulties in this area, because that's a form of censorship too. What appears on your news feed and what doesn't, and how do you decide? And I think Facebook is in a conundrum because they have to figure out whether they're a publisher or whether they are content neutral. Mm-hmm. And I think they haven't decided that yet. I think Mark Zuckerberg can't make up his mind. But if they're going to be a publisher, they shouldn't get immunity. Neither should Trump, neither should any other publisher.
Okay, Adam, I'm coming to you, and I'm going to actually serve this one up to you because I'm a bit cynical right now. Adam, don't mind me. Just make sure your mic is there. I think Zuckerberg has made up his mind. I think his mind is on money. But that being an aside, your thoughts, Adam, as you make your conclusions before we try to land this plane.
If you think that Mark Zuckerberg and Jack Dorsey care about a marketplace of ideas, and I have a bridge to sell you, they care about enforcing a liberal agenda. It's so obvious. And the government is working directly with them to suppress information that they don't like. That is contrary to the First Amendment. It's contrary to a marketplace of ideas. It's contrary to liberty. It impedes democracy. You know what, Deidre? I know that's what it was like in Lithuania, but you've been here for a number of years. I'm surprised that you haven't adjusted yet.
Okay, and right on cue, Deidre. Please. You're front and center, young lady. Big lights are on, and Adam just called you a name.
Well, I think that it is naive to think that First Amendment could be used to really apply to social media platforms. I think that Section 230 is a great section. I think it has to remain here. Yes, the social platforms have a lot of issues and we need to resolve them. Government inclusion or certain conduct could be one of them. It needs to be further tested and decided on. But I am still confirmed in my beliefs that we had enough indication in the past and in the future that certain actors for certain positions, in certain positions and authority, could be banned from private media organizations with sufficient evidence, as in this particular case would be Trump, because there are other platforms as well for him to express his nonsense.
Okay, now it's time to vote. So we're going to vote real quick, and then I'll have some concluding remarks and hand it over to Nick. So, Nick, are everybody ready for the vote? The vote is, should Trump prevail? Should he be allowed back onto social media, or should social media continue to maintain its right to censor him? All those in favor of Trump's school of thought, please signify by saying aye. How many ayes do we have?
Aye.
Okay.
We have one.
We have two.
Said aye. We have two.
We have two.
I think the case should be dismissed.
Okay.
Summary judgment.
Summary judgment. You got two against.
Okay, so then
the vote. Wait, Bill, you're the deciding vote.
No, I'm a host. By the rules, I cannot vote in order to maintain. It's 2-2. Now, it seems to me the following is true. And once again, I thoroughly enjoy the Lawyer's Den, but I want to point this out. First of all, it's one of the reasons why we run, we participate in the Lawyer's Den is that from time to time, every squirrel, in fact, does grab an acorn or a nut. And tonight there are two. And the two arguments are, first, Trump's people really ought to look at the Supreme Court doctrine that says a company town, because that indeed is the case, that the argument that they did not plead, that they ought to plead if they want to force. And that argument comes from the Lawyer's Den, and particularly our crew of Nick, Adam, and Jeff, and the rest, and Deidre. Now, it's also true that Adam's novel argument of collusion is an argument certainly that needs to be fleshed out, because obviously Jeff and or I, if indeed there were evidence, would, well, we would be swayed by that argument. But we can't figure out those arguments unless somebody, pleads the case and submits it to court. So, with that having been said, maybe Trump's team ought to hire two constitutional, certified LLMs rather than relying on mere JDs, because all we can do is ever just qualify to be a
Good point, by the way. But anyway, keep going.
Okay, with that having been said, I do want to offer the following. Nick, always a pleasure. I have had some fun this evening. It's a 2-2 tie, and I suspect that we really are missing our colleague who is away from us on an assignment. So, Nick, I hand it over to you. Thank you for this hour. Thank you for all of our audience. And please, Nick, can you land?
Yeah, I hate ties. We need to get Fernando back here and break this little sucker up. But I have to give some credit to Adam and Jeff, because they brought in arguments that really need to be brought in, or this case is going nowhere. And that's, how much did the government influence the social media networks to abridge freedom of speech? But they didn't say that. They really need to, Bill, a well-pled complaint makes a big difference. And I'm not sure if this one's well-pled. And with that, we'd like to thank everybody for watching the Lawyer's Den. In the future, maybe we can get the audience to vote. I'd like to hear from them. And we'll see you next time on Lawyer's Den. I think we're next week, because Adam's at a conference. So we're not going to have anything anymore. He's going to go to conference. Yeah. We'll see you next week on Lawyer's Den. Deidre goes, let's go look at something that took place 40 years ago. Who cares? Okay, that's